it right away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Taria, are you ready to get this party started?
Oh, yes,
Are you ready
definitely.
to dig into this conversation?
Most definitely.
So if you're just jumping on, if you're just joining us, welcome back to the Influencer's Journey Show. Our topic today is unlock entrepreneurial success. Why an idea alone isn't enough for a thriving business. My name is Suzanne Hart, and my girl here is Taria Hodge. And this topic, I believe, is irresistible.
Mm.
So where do you want to start?
Yeah, so let's start by unpacking the concept of why an idea is not enough. So like we said at the top of the show, a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs come into the space all excited because they have an idea. And because they have an idea, they think, ooh, I'm ready to start a business. And then they jump into the waters and then they find out it's a whole bunch of stuff. And like I said, that was part of it is me, because that's how I thought. I thought because I was brilliant and I had this idea that, in 4 years, I gave myself 4 years, I was going to be a millionaire. And not yet. So there was a lot of things that I had to learn on the journey, and this was one of them. So let's start there. Why is an idea not enough?
Well, I want you to think about, first of all, an idea is often a theory. It's abstract. It's not concrete. It's like an epiphany, if you will. I know for myself, I get ideas, they drop into me while I'm in the shower, probably because I'm relaxed, or when I'm working out, ideas just fly in. And some of them are business ideas, some of them are just other ideas, but ideas come in. And I think where people make the big mistake, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs make the business mistake, is they have the idea and then they also think, and I know how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And they take their skill set from wherever they're coming from, and they say, oh yeah, I can totally do this. Now, the most confusing thing for anybody stepping in on a learning curve is to work with someone who is all over the place. It's in their head. They know exactly what to do. And have you ever had someone do it, but they've missed like 5 steps?
Mm-hmm.
And those 5 steps need to be done, but because they've been doing this thing so long, they forgot to tell you?
Oh, I have one better for you. They not only do they forget to tell you the steps, but every time they do it differently. So they aren't aware of the steps because the steps keep changing.
Absolutely. So oftentimes when people come to business with their ideas, they've lived the doing of it per se, and sometimes not, and they're what we call an unconscious competent.
Mm-hmm.
So they're unconsciously doing this thing, right? And if you ever watch someone who's in sales, and some people are natural salespeople and they're unconsciously really competent. And they're doing all these things naturally. And when they go to show you, they're just, you just do this. And you're just like, do what? What do you just do? I don't know what you just did. And they're like, you just do this. And you're just, I don't know what you're talking about. And I know for myself, that's real for me, because when I first started selling, I would watch people sell and I would think I was doing what they were doing, because that's what they told me. But there was all these other nuances that they weren't doing that I didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So an idea and having the skills definitely isn't enough. And so the question is, why not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so at the top of the hour, when we started, Sharia was talking about duplication. She was talking about doing things the same way. And what I want to drop in the space right now is that people buy processes.
Mm-hmm.
They buy frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
They buy systems. They buy pathways, a consistent way of doing things. I always call it the paint by number way, the connect the dots way, the follow the bouncing ball way. That is what people buy. Because when you don't know how to do something, you want it broken down into these small bite-sized pieces where you can follow the path very clearly. That's that's what people buy. So when we have an idea and we haven't organized it in our thoughts and broken it down, then there's a missing for the consumer.
And like I said, it's one of the things that, I had to come to terms with, because I'll give you an example. One of the reasons that prompted me to step out and launch my own brand was exactly that. So one of the things that I saw that there were, entrepreneurs or coaches out there who are brilliant in what it is that they do, and they have an idea and they're very successful with their idea, meaning that they're able to implement this idea and this process for themselves, and they get magnificent results. And what was happening is that people are watching, right? So you have your audience and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's really great. I love the results that you're getting. What do you do? How do you do that? And it was like, oh yeah, I'll go ahead and develop a product, right? Because that's what we're told to do. Oh, I'll go ahead and I'll develop a product. And to develop this product and to put the product into the market. But the problem was there was missing pieces, meaning clients, buyers, they couldn't come in and receive the same success as, the seller of the program, the creator of the program. Mm-hmm. And I started asking myself the question, well, why is that? And it wasn't until I started to peel back things on my own, I was just like, oh, this is missing, this is missing, this is missing. Okay, some of the things I had the skill set for, other things that I didn't have the skill set for, and I had to go learn those things. I had to acquire some things, and those things weren't obvious when the program was developed or when the program was sold. Mm-hmm. And so I was just like, oh, this is where the confusion is. There's missing pieces here. And so that's the challenge. How do you and you use the word unconscious competence. And I think a lot of times, we do operate from that space when it's a thing that we love, the thing that we've been doing for years, we have that unconscious competence of it, but we don't stop to think about our audience. We don't stop to think about our clients, that they don't come from that background. So we almost have to do the painstaking thing of scaling it back. And the reason why I say painstaking, because for some people, it feels frustrating to have to go back and look at all the little nuances, all the little steps, remember everything and then put them into a system. But it's really imperative that you do that, because if you don't do that, then people are going to be stuck. You're going to be the person out there who, get great results, but you're only getting great results for yourself.
So I want to give an idea and make this kind of real for people. So I want everyone to consider that you're about to board a flight. You're going from Toronto to Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And you've gone online, you've got your ticket, and so you're ready to go. You've got your bags, all that stuff. And now you go to you've walked through the door of the airport, and there's no signs. There's no signage at all. And all you know is you have 2 hours to find your plane. Yeah. And so if you go start asking people are going to give you different directions. And there's nothing more frustrating when you don't know what to do or where you're going to get different types of directions. It is confusing, it's frustrating. And when anxiety is high, our listening is low. When anxiety is high, we're impatient. All those things start to kick in. What's beautiful about an airport is very process oriented, right? They have a very clear system. And not only do they have a clear system, they have key guides at every step to tell you what you do in this space. So, you get to the ticket counter, you get in, you read the signs, you go, oh, this is my ticket counter. And if you're confused, there'll be someone walking around going, oh, that counter's down there.
I'm smiling because I was just like, oh yeah, that is such a great analogy. Just imagine if people were from the islands where they don't give street signs, they just give landmarks.
That's right. So and so what happens from the minute you step into an airport, you step into a very clear process, a very clear system. It's very duplicatable. No one does it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone gets to their gates. That's how they get thousands of people to their gates in very short period of time, because it's very clearly outlined. So I'm going to ask some people, is your business like the airport with no signs?
Mm-hmm.
Or is your business like the very well-marked, process-oriented, systematized airport?
Yeah.
Because that's really what we're talking about. Now, this is the interesting thing, because this is the difference between you and I as we work together. My mind is very process-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
I will stop and go, okay, so I need to see every step. That's just how my mind works. And even as people are talking to me, I am breaking things down. I have been like that since I was young. So there's people who are very process oriented in how they think and how they see things. And then there's people who are not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't see the process at all. They just know this is what I do. And if you go, their desks are different. Their offices are organized different. There's just a different way of being. So why I'm putting that out there is, if you're not process oriented, and you're more technician, I got in the doing, then maybe that's not your role, and you need to find someone who's
I was just about to say, find you someone else who is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because what we do is we talk through her programs so that she can pick my process oriented mind. I'll be like, stop, what happened here? And how'd you get there? And you're missing this. And what did happen? And so now we're breaking it apart. Right. And then when you have your process, you also want to get someone who doesn't know what you do to walk through it with you. Can they follow you?
So I love that you're saying that, because that piece right there is so key. And I think that's where also a lot of entrepreneurs, especially the new ones, kind of fall short. What we're talking about specifically is the feedback. And so are you able to take feedback and accept feedback and use the feedback to your benefit? And so here's an example of this. So how many, people out there have programs? So you have programs, you launch your programs, you get people to enroll in your programs, and people go through the programs. And then, you might be like me, where people got stuck coming through your program. And so do you take the feedback of people being stuck to mean, oh, this program isn't good, so I'm not going to do it anymore? Or you get all in your feelings and you throw your hands up in the air and you quit? Or do you say, oh, wow, there's a breakdown here. What's the breakdown? How can I go back and clarify this? How can I go back, add steps to make it easier? And I hate to use the analogy, but it's the closest thing to it. So can a 5-year-old do it? Mm-hmm. Can you break your stuff down that simple that anyone could pick it up and, like you said, paint by the numbers, mm-hmm. and go through the steps and receive the results that you want to have, or you want them to have?
And what the point that you're making right now is so key, because I remember the first time I saw Artemis Limpert talk, and she talked about building the plane while flying it. It was the first time I heard this concept, and she talked about actually building out her program as she taught it. And I've adopted it because it's such a great way. So I do my outline. So I do my process, if you will, my framework, my pathway. And then as I teach it, I'm in that feedback loop. Mm-hmm. So I can actually clarify the path, the process as I'm going along. And therefore, I'm breaking it down for the receiver of the content, not for my mind, because I know that I can think something, but as I'm teaching it, mm-hmm. I am I'm in that feedback loop, and I've got to break things down smaller. And once I've taught it, I'm now in a position to tighten up the information so that someone can truly understand it. So I think, what you're saying is so key, Taria, is like, please don't get in your feelings. And don't get attached to what you originally built. Be in that feedback loop, because your clients will give you the information, and clients will give you grace if you're willing to go through the process of clarifying.
Well, but this is the thing, that's who you want to get the feedback from, because your process isn't for you.
Absolutely.
You have a product, we're talking about business here. So it's not for you, it's for them. So it becomes a question of serving and how well you serve and what you're willing to do to be able to serve better and to serve more. And so that's what it is. And like I said, that was the mindset shift, because like I said, when I launched, my first beginning early programs, I had an idea in my head, and I was just like, oh, this is what I want to teach based on what I saw from my lens and my perspective. And so what I did, I developed programs and launched them. People thought they were great ideas. People bought into them. And one of the things that I noticed is that, oh my gosh, like, why aren't people getting the results that I desired for them? Okay, so it wasn't good enough for me to say, well, I launched a program and people bought it and I made the money and walked away. No, I root for success, for my clients. And it's like, oh my gosh, why aren't they moving? Why are they stuck? And so I had to go back, like, what's going on here? What's the breakdown? And as I started to, uncover and peel back, oh, this is the things that I didn't say. This is the things that I took for granted because I've been in this space for so long, and I've been doing this for so long, or I have this in my background. This comes easy and it comes natural to me, but for them, not so much.
Absolutely.
And so I had to, keep going back, refining. And that's what it's called, a business.
And I want to highlight the rewrite. I have rewritten my program almost every year, added, tweaked it, all those different things. And why? Because I've grown. New things have been introduced. I've learned from clients, and therefore I'm enhancing. And so part of it is you want to tighten that up by living in the feedback loop. And I think the thing we really want to leave you with is that it has to be a very clear step-by-step pathway to the outcome you desire, and really pay attention to, are people getting the outcome? Now, I know for me, one of the things I always ask myself is, what does the outcome look like at the end of the process? Like, what does it look like? And I want people to really begin to ask themselves that, because, we build things out and we go, yeah, that's that I'm going to get them here. What does that actually truly look like, feel like? What is the experience of arriving at a very clear outcome? What will they be able to do? How will they be able to do it? How quickly will they be able to do it? How competent will they feel? All those things you want to answer, because you want to get clear on where you're taking people and test out, does my process get them there?
Right. Awesome. And so I have another question for you. And the question is, so why can't you be the guide without having a process?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think that when you have an idea, and we've touched on it, you have an idea, but if you haven't tested it, you haven't lived it out. And I'll go back. I pick on professors a lot, I know. So how many of you have met the professor, the teacher, who teaches you theory, and as they're teaching it, you can tell they have never done this?
Well, that's why they're a professor.
Not necessarily. I've had some professors that have some serious lived experience, and they teach differently.
Mm.
And I want you guys to get this. They teach differently because they have
To
experience.
bring their experience to the table.
Absolutely. And you know that experience is very different than theory. Now, I'll tell you, when I graduated from social services, from family, individual, and group counseling, social psych, and I went to work for my first week, they took me out to see a family. And as we rolled up to the house, I found Dad hanging out the window, saying not nice words to me. I had never met him, and it was very intimidating. Now, I can tell you, I did crisis training, I did mediation, I did all these things in my educational experience in the classroom. Nothing prepared me for the emotional shock and my body's reaction to that situation. I went into fight and flight and freeze. I think I went through all three of them at the same time. And then I thought maybe I should just run away. And I got back into my car and left and thought, oh my gosh, I got to go back there tomorrow. And the reason I share that is because I had the skills per se, theoretically, but I had never had to implement the skills in the face of reality.
Yeah.
And so there are things that you go through when you actually live and go through the pathway yourself. There's things that you'll be confronted by. There's things that you will learn. There's things that you will do that you didn't think of until you went through the experience. Right? I think that's the first thing. I think the other thing, Sharia, is that in order to be a coach, a guide, this is a world according to Suzanne, right? You want to know that pathway intimately. You want to know that process intimately, because there's something about being able to anticipate where your clients will get stuck, being able to shed light on stuff. And you always give this great analogy about people going live on social media, and you teach them all the technology of going live, but there's still something in the way of them going live, which is all the emotional stuff that you got to talk them through. Until we live the guide and go through the process, we come to it in theory, and we don't have the experience, so we can't have the anticipation, so we can't shed light, one, and we can't talk people off the cliff if we don't understand the cliff.
If you've never been on the cliff.
Right.
You know, but it's so true. And those are the things that make you know, more relatable to your clients, because those things are the unsaid things. So it's very easy. And it's one of the things that I learned, like you're talking about it, when we take a look at how people describe their pain points, or how they describe how they're stuck. Usually the thing that they tell you is never the thing.
Yeah.
It's never the thing, you know, and I had to, you know, come to terms with that. So part of my experience, people was telling me that they're afraid of technology, they don't like technology. And I got into it, you know, based on, well, let me just make the technology easy. Let me just show you how to do the technology. And to me, technology is like muscle memory. You do something, by the third or fourth time you do it, you repeat it, you pretty much have the steps. It's muscle memory. And so I learned that it's not the technology, it's all the other stuff that goes on up in here that stops them. And that was my key and my prompt to go back and take a look at my process. And I want to say this, in the beginning, when I started to look at my process, I thought that no one really wanted to hear that part of it. And I used to tell people, like you use the example of going live, I used to tell people I was that person who would be so nervous and if you know me, deathly afraid, of public speaking, prefer to be the behind the scenes person, but did a show because I wanted to know how the technology worked.
Mm-hmm.
When I started, I was just like, oh my gosh, how do people do this? How do people just turn on their camera and be on? And then I realized that I'm not that person. I'm the person who needed to plan everything out before. I was the person who would get ready for 10 o'clock live from 6 o'clock in the morning. And I had everything laid out. And I remember, being in the space where I felt bad because my colleagues weren't that way.
Mm-hmm.
My colleagues who were doing video before me, they seemed to just turn on the camera, be ready to go, and they have all of that hype and excitement. And I'm deathly afraid. I'm shaking in my boots, like I want to cry. I want to pass out. Like that's my prayer every single time. Like, Lord, please don't let me pass out on this camera. And what I found when I started to share it and talk with it, there were more people like me who was just like, I want to do this, but that's what's stopping me. What's stopping me is the fear of
Mm-hmm.
showing up on camera, is the fear of not knowing what to say and how to plan this out and how to show up this way. And so that became my process. So let me show people what to do all the way up until they hit the live button. Those are the things that people don't talk about because it's not the sexy stuff. Okay.
And
The sexy stuff is being on camera.
And this is so key because we talk about the 10,000 hours, right? And they say before you become an expert, you have to put in those 10,000 hours. And it's not the 10,000 same hours. And I really want to highlight this. It's not 10,000 hours of doing the exact same thing. It's 10,000 hours of going down the rabbit hole and expanding what you know. It's 10,000 hours of how do I grow and become better. It's 10,000 hours of how do I make this simpler? How do I pick this apart to make it easy? And so one of the things about being the guide is exactly what you're talking about, is you're going on this journey from a place to understand, right? From a place to understand, from a place to go from an unconscious competent to a conscious competent, so that you can break things down in such a way that when you speak it into existence, that it's clear for people, it is understandable. I think that's the first part when we say, like, you've got to go through the process to be a good guide, a great guide. I think you're also talking about how you communicate things. And until we are able to break things down, we don't communicate them as effectively, right? How do I say this? I mean, as I write, sometimes it's spending time going, yeah, that's not clear. That is not what I mean to say. That's not conveying what I want to say. That's not the real deal. And so how do I communicate things? And then you're talking about emotions. What emotions have I gone through on this journey? And what emotions are my clients going to go through? And how do I guide them through these emotional places and spaces?
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, how do they show up behaviorally? Like, you've got all these things that when you're taking someone through a process, idea is just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I want to really highlight that. When I have an idea, it's all in here. It's cerebral. And so your process is like your blueprint. Before a contractor builds, they map it all out. They make sure that everybody's on the same page. Well, it's, can you actually map it all out, but on all these different levels: thought, communication, emotion, behavior. Now you have a process that people can dig their teeth into. And so it really is, competency takes hours.
Yeah. That's really good. It that's really good. I was thinking about another thing as you were speaking, and why it's really imperative that you really do have a process. One of the things that stood out for me is that without your process or without your pathway, there's nothing for you to come back to. And what I mean by that, and I don't know how many of our super achievers have ever, encountered this, but I have had, some very convincing clients in my time. Let me just say that they could be quite convincing. And, if you're not careful, they will convince you that you don't know what you do know. So you got to be careful. So I've experienced that, where, coming through, the process, and people hit that roadblock, or they get to that bump, or they're confronted, like you said, by emotions and all of these other things. The natural tendency that comes up is resistance. Mm-hmm. And so they start resisting. The excuses, the more they resist, the more they're resistant, the better their excuses get. And I'm telling you, I found myself believing some of those excuses, and I would be like, oh my gosh, oh no, it's a problem, with what I'm doing. And, sadly to say, I would lose my confidence in my product and my service until I really got the concept. Like, you know what? Let me be clear in this process. Mm-hmm. And so as I got clear in it, when those, roadblocks came up, the stumbling blocks, the fear showed up, I was able to easily recognize that, oh, this is where they are, and it's okay. So I don't have to be moved. There's nothing wrong with my process and my pathway. I could hear the convincing argument, and I could come back and say, it's okay, I understand, but this is where you are. So now let's work through it.
And I love this, because you're saying is that this is where they are in the process. And I know it by their emotional state.
Yes.
By their language, by their behavior. And I need to bring them back to this place and help them unpack it. And that's such a great mindset piece, because as you bring them back, unless you know the process, as you're saying, you can't bring them back to a particular place. And I think the other part is knowing what was before and what comes after. And sometimes it's being able to say, okay, you're right here in the process. We completed this. If you don't do this effectively, you cannot get here. Yeah. Right. And oftentimes, particularly when processes are intangible, they're not concrete. So I was teaching leadership on the weekend. And in my leadership process, there's 5 steps, 5 phases. And I was able to say to someone, if you miss this step, you have no credibility. And it was interesting to watch the person stop.
Right.
And go, oh. And then I could articulate why.
Right.
And I could define leadership for them in such a way, again, my language, that they got it. So I could hold them in this step so that they can learn the skills necessary in this place to continue on, because I'm committed to them living the outcome that is in my head, in terms of this is what it's going to look like, this is what they're going to be able to do, this is what they're going to be able to feel like, this is how confident they are. I've got to get them through it. Now, going back to what you said, as the guide, the only way I understand this is I've been stuck there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know what it's like to skip that spot, or I've had other people try to skip that spot. And the process is designed to ensure that you don't skip that spot. My language is designed to ensure you don't skip that spot. And I can spot it when you do.
Yeah. And the key thing, and I want our super achievers to get this, like these little things that we're talking about, they aren't actually little things, they're big things. And these are the differentiator things. And so, like I said, the problem that people share with you, that's a problem, is never the real problem. But once you're able to communicate with them and say, I get it, I understand, I see you. And the reason why I see you is because I've been there. Then there's that shift that occurs. And now they don't have to come out of their mouth and say it's fear, right? It's understood.
Mm-hmm.
And you're able to serve them in a way that still allows them to, I don't know what the word is, like save face, or, just totally be open with you. And then, then you have your person and they have their person. Okay. And that's like the real difference in how I wanted to do business versus how a lot of other people were doing business in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. And I think the key, going back to why people buy processes, not ideas, they buy processes and systems, is because for all the super achievers listening, an idea is abstract.
Mm.
Right? An idea is not is abstract. It's fluid. It's intangible. When you take the time to take that idea and build it out into a process, you now have taken the time to make it concrete for people. And I think for those of you that are coaches, those of you that are consultants, those of you that are living in the land of intellectual property, it's really important that you get this, because intellect is here, and for many people it's abstract.
Mm-hmm.
And what our job is to take what's here and make it concrete, and make it so that it becomes visible for people, it becomes understandable, and it becomes so clear that someone can take what's in your head and not only just transfer it theoretically, but transfer it,
Right.
one, the information, but then transfer it emotionally, transfer it behaviorally, and transfer it through language. And so you've got to take that idea and make it concrete so that you get someone to the outcome. And I think that's what inspired this conversation, where we were looking at so many people. And I know I was telling Tria, I keep asking them, so what do you do? And they would kept using this word. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, okay, but what is that? And they'd be like, they've used the same word. And then I'd say, okay, but what's that look like? And they tell me the same thing over and over again. And I'd be like, hey, how's that happen? And because they didn't have a pathway, they were still in the ideation stage. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. And so, particularly when you're coming into marketing and all these different things, this is so key, mm-hmm. to have these things broken down so you can put voice to it, yeah. and paint a picture, mm-hmm. of what's possible and why.
Yeah. Yeah. And before we move on, I just want to share this thing, or this point with our super achievers, is like one of the greatest things that you pointed out to me this week that I didn't even pay attention to when it happened. I had the opportunity to be in a conversation with a potential client. And as we were on our discovery call, and she's going along and she's sharing with me, her goals and her desires and her vision for her business and all the things that, she wants to be able to do. What I was able to do is say, oh, okay, this is where she is in my pathway. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's also that thing that you have to develop, and you have to know what it is, because a lot of times people get so excited that they're, in conversation with someone, being a client, and they're having that conversation and they're agreeing to a lot of things, but is it part of your pathway? Where does it fit? Do you even do that? Mm-hmm. and those are the real questions, right? And so as I shared with you, you were like, wow, that's really great. You knew exactly where she fit, into mm-hmm. the pathway. And because I knew it, I had it written out, had it in front of me, I was able to say, okay, she's done all of these other things. She's proficient in these areas, but this is where she is, and this is where she's growing into. And so the conversation occurred with ease and flow, and there was synergy and all of that stuff. It didn't feel as if teeth were being pulled, which I
Mhm.
know when I first started having those calls, sometimes it felt that way. Just like, oh God, why is this so hard? It's because you weren't able to tell where people are. You're guessing where they are. You're assuming where they are, but you really don't know for sure because you haven't laid, everything out for yourself.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Mhm. Okay. And so we're going to switch gears a little bit. So I have, a question for you, and I love, love, love when we talk about this. So you mentioned earlier about the 10,000 hours and 10,000 hours not being, 10,000 hours doing the same thing. So what's the importance of the 10,000 hours and why is it so key?
I think you just nailed it as you were talking about having a discovery call and doing a sales process with someone. Because I have lived my 10,000, feels like way more, but 10,000 hours,
Mhm.
and I have broken things down, and I have had my own emotional moments. I've had my own temper tantrums, my failures, my get back up, my I don't know how to do this, figuring it out, breaking things down. What happens for me is when I am on a call with a client, I can literally see where they are in the process as they're speaking to me.
Mhm.
What it allows for is for me to ask really good clarifying questions, because I'm actually going through something in my head and I'm looking for the information I need to pull for them to get what I need to serve them. So the first thing is that it allows me to ask really, really good questions and collect really good information. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing, having lived the 10,000 hours and having put together a clear path, a process that is really clear to me, once I get the information, I am able to paint a really clear picture for the person of what's occurring. So language, right? What
Mhm.
they're going to have to do, how's this journey going to unfold, how much time it's going to take, what they can expect. How is it going to happen? I think the other thing is that because I have done this so much and I've broken it down so much, my language becomes really clear. And I always know when I'm hitting the mark. I always say that the client picks up the brush and starts painting with me, right? It's almost like they step into the picture, they step into the process, and they go, oh yeah, I am really here. And yes, I really need to get here. And yes, you're right, where I'm stuck is here. And they start painting with me. And I have articulated something that they can see and feel. And when I'm able to do this, a yes becomes easy,
Mhm.
because the person feels, one, understood,
Yeah.
two, they have clarity that they may not have had before, because I've actually been able to break things down and break it down in a way where they can see it and also understand what they don't understand in the moment, so I can speak to it
Right.
and tell them where they're going to learn, what they're going to grow, why it's normal to be stuck here, why this is common, why they're not alone, that this is a common places that people get stuck. I can normalize this growth process because I have put in the time and I understand it intimately.
Yeah. Awesome.
So that's my reason.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
What I want to know, because I know for you, the journey of really developing and deepening your process has been big and live in your life right
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
What is it like to one, develop your process and into a living, breathing document that you can use and have laid out in front of you as you're talking to clients?
So, at the top of the show, you mentioned that there's a distinction between two different types of people. So you have the people who think in processes, you. Then you have the people like me who don't. And so I remember coming through and, hearing, oh, you need to create your SOP. You need to create your SOP. And so for those of you who are not familiar with what the SOP is a standard operating procedure, AKA your process, your pathway. And for me, that was like the hardest thing because my brain does not work that way. Creative being technicals, I got to put my hands on it, but to write it down, like, oh my gosh. So it was really, really hard, but it was that thing that I had to learn to get to and had to get to very quickly because it was the deciding factor. Number one, if people really going to work with me, because you have those people out there who really want to know, like, can you do what it is you say that you're going to do? If I invest in this program, this product, your services, am I going to get the results? And the answer is more than just saying yes. You have to be able to show them, right? This is what it takes. This is what's required. This is what's required on my behalf. And this is also what's required on your behalf. And that's the thing. And so once those things are clear and everyone knows what they're responsible for in the plan, then they're able to choose in and choose out and say, well, I'm up for this. And some people say, yes, I'm up for this. Let's go ahead and work. And others was like, oh, no, that doesn't fit into what it is I want to do. I don't see myself doing that. And then we save ourselves a lot of heartache by getting into a relationship that's not going to work. It's not going to benefit anyone because things aren't clear. And then the second thing I wanted to say about that is that it became living and breathing. And so as I began to grow, as I began to learn, more things change in the social media world all the time. How am I developing and getting these things clear, and how am I bringing them back, and how am I adjusting the process, and how am I making it tighter? The third part to it, as we start to work with team members and you're building your team and you're removing yourself out of processes. So let me just say this, we're talking about business people. Oh boy. And we're removing ourselves out of things. Are you able to communicate effectively to others on your team or you people that you collaborate with? Because that's what a lot of our work looks like, the collaboration. Do they really get it? Do they really understand it? So when you step away, you step out of the picture, those things happen smoothly. They happen with less and less, and eventually none of your involvement. And so that's the growth, that I have to say that it's, took on for me to know that it's living and breathing. It's not just something that, it's done once and then you never go back and touch it and look at it. It's always updated. It's always documented. As you grow, your business grow, these things grow along with you.
As you were talking, what it really had me present to, for me, it's my method of accountability. Mm-hmm. It's a way I keep myself accountable to what I am to deliver and how I'm to deliver for my clients. And what it also allows is if I miss something, I can see it. Mm-hmm. Right? If something's not working, I can go back and say, you know what, we need to go back here. And I need to go deeper here. I need to reteach this. Right. I need to spend more time here. Because, for me, is when someone trusts me and hands over their hard-earned money, I have a responsibility to be able to deliver. And so I have to put in place, or I choose to put in place, things that hold me accountable to that delivery, things that hold me accountable to what I say I'm going to do. And I think the other thing that you're talking about is people, you can manage expectations when people know the lay of the land. Right. When they don't know the lay of the land, so when they don't know the path that you're taking them on, they don't understand it. I don't mean they'll understand everything, but if they can't see it, right, you've got people who have expectations that are all over the place, timelines that are not realistic. But when you're able to lay it out, you're able to really manage expectations. And that is huge for people, because now they can situate themselves in side of something and see the beginning and see the end and understand what it's going to take, how long it's going to take, what's going to be asked of them, how much are they going to have to grow. All those things become clear when you're able to lay it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love this.
Absolutely. All right. Oh my gosh, we are at the top of the hour already. I mean, time just seems to fly so quickly when we sit down and we have these conversations. So once again, if you're out there, you're catching us on a live, go ahead, drop us a comment. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know your views on what you thought, what you got from the conversation that we're having today. And even if you come back and you catch us on the replay, make sure you utilize the comment section and let us know what came up for you as you tuned in to this week's The Influencer's Journey show. So,
all right. Go ahead.
No, I was just about to say, so I'm getting ready to close us out, Suzanne, with the thought of the week. And the thought of the week comes from W. Edwards Deming. And he says, if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, then you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, he just got in our faces. He was like, okay, we're not going to mince words. I'm just going to tell you the way it is. That just summed up everything that we were talking about. Right? If you can't break it down, my man says you don't know what you're doing.
And
that's truth to power.
Yeah. And what I want to, tag on to that as I listen to this, one of the things like we've been saying all along for the whole entire broadcast is all about clear communication. And then one of the things that stands out for me is that it's competence. And so once you have competence in what it is you're doing, it breeds confidence. So the more competent you become in your craft and what it is that you do, aka lay out your process and your pathway, then it allows you to be more confident in your business.
So as we close, we want you to be confident, as Tria says. So, we will be back here next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with a brand new topic. So until we meet again, please know you're brilliant. Know you are oh so special. And we do this work because the world is waiting. The world is waiting for your unique gifts. Blessings, and we'll see you next week.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.